What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Next Step podcast. And today we've got a very special episode for you. We have our very first guest.
What?
Our very first guest.
Who's in the house? Who's in the house? Who is it?
It's Cathy, Coach Cathy. What's up, Cathy?
Not much. I'm glad to be here. This is going to be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Lots of fun.
And, you know, Cathy, we thought you would be the perfect first guest on the Next Step podcast because I think there's a lot that people don't know about you. And you've got a pretty unique journey as I've gotten to know you better. And I wanted to learn more, and I think everybody would like to know the mysteries of Coach Cathy.
Yes, Cathy is very mysterious.
Yeah, so maybe I'll do a mini intro and then ask you some questions.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Well, Coach Cathy is our newest full-time coach at Hybrid. She started as a member and came on and as a part-time coach, and now she's here full-time. She's building up our Pilates and yoga program coming very soon, which is exciting.
Yeah.
And Cathy, the great thing about having Cathy on your team, on your side, is I don't know, like if you ever think there's a project that needs to get done, like it's done before you ask and more, and you're like, what? And with a smile on her face all the time, like things just get done that would never get done thanks to you, Cathy. And that's just, one thing I can think about. Dusty, is there anything you would add?
I mean, she's just the presence she brings to the gym. It's just different, you know? I mean, I don't know. She's... And I don't want to say this in a negative... I hope you don't take this in a negative way. You're like the mom of Hybrid.
Yes.
The mom of Hybrid.
I'm the hybrid hen.
Yeah, like it's... I don't know. You're definitely the the glue that keeps us together. Like you're like I don't even consider you like a bench player, but like you know how they have like the sixth man on like a basketball team. Like you're so important, but you don't get the credit you deserve. That's how I view you.
Yeah, is it like Scottie Pippen? Is that an example, or did Scottie Pippen get credit?
Scottie Pippen was a starter,
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, nice try though.
Well, yeah, and it's pretty cool like how you ended up here, because I've gotten to know a little bit about your background and all of the different directions you've gone in your life, and so for you to end up here is pretty cool. And so this podcast is the next step, and this is like one of your next steps.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, why don't you give us a little background, like how did adult life start for you, and how did you end up here?
Oh, gosh. Well, I come from a big family. So I think at one point I counted like 27 cousins, second cousins kind of thing. And I have just one brother, but very loving family in New Hampshire. And I think I was only the second one to go to college out of all my cousins. So that was a big step. I didn't really have anyone to show me kind of the ropes, like how to do that well. So I didn't necessarily do it well. And I ended up transferring, going to lots of different colleges, getting lots of different degrees and certifications, everything from business management to art history to cultural anthropology, and now like all my certifications for fitness, personal training, Pilates, yoga, etc. So there was definitely a lot. That's a pretty broad spectrum, but you have to take into account that I'm twice your age. So I've had a lot more time to get all that stuff done. And I think what sent me here to Hybrid was actually going through a journey of illness. And I think that that's not talked about as much as far as people, going on a fitness journey. A lot of it is focused on weight loss or strength training or something. But there's a lot of people out there whose health has been really diminished by illness. And fitness is one way to take that back. So that's kind of why I'm here at Hybrid.
Gotcha.
And when did you start? You started as a member, right? Like you started coming to class. I believe it was around the time I started coaching. I could be wrong.
You were the intern at the time. Yes. Yes. So I remember you were coaching some of the first classes that I took with someone, like with Beth or Brandon or someone. Yeah.
And the one thing that I noticed, just real quick, when you started, there was something different about you, and when you came to class, you were always very, very curious about like the what, the whys, and the hows. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, she asked a lot of questions. This is good. This is really good. Like, and it, looking back, it's no surprise that you ended up coming on as part of the team. So.
Well, but I still ask a lot of questions, so about everything.
That I wouldn't expect anything less with your 1,000 different certifications. You're driven to learn, and that's a fantastic quality.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that through that educational journey all these years is I've had like everything for jobs, from waitressing to cleaning summer cabins to sitting behind a mahogany desk in the executive suite. So like there's been like a ton of different experiences there too. So I think it's kind of easier for me maybe to put myself in the place of our members and where they're coming from at times.
Yeah, that is one of your many great qualities. Very, very empathetic and understanding.
Well, what's really cool is you are like the demographic of our client, right?
Yes.
And like I am not, Dusty is not. So like you can see things and have a different perspective than myself, Dusty, Brandon, Mike. Like you are, you bring something that we can't bring, no matter how hard we try. And I think that's very powerful. But so you said what brought you here was illness.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about that.
So, they say that your 40s is supposed to be, your 20s kind of, but better. Well, for me, my 40s, I literally fell apart, like in every single way. So I was 41, and it was Christmas time, and I got shingles. So actually, it was probably the most peaceful Christmas I've ever had because I didn't have to go anywhere. I couldn't see anybody. I was just home with my family. So there was that sort of silver lining, and I think that's important with any illness, is to look for that silver lining, because it is there, and just kind of really dig deep on why you have that illness, or and the things that you can do to overcome that. So that was the first one, and then 6 months later, I had meningitis, and that took months, if not years, of recovery. And there were moments during meningitis that I actually wanted to die. Like I actually had my mom write out letters to my kids, because I was like, I'm out of here. I can't do this. Like my head hurts too bad. I can't do this. And then at the same time, I found out later that I probably had Lyme disease at the same time. But the symptoms were so similar that they didn't really catch that, and so that would be like all the nerve pain. I was like, that was probably the Lyme and not necessarily the meningitis speaking. Then after that, 2017, I had thrombocytopenia, which is it's a platelet disorder. So you were supposed to have 240,000 and up platelets in your body, and it just helps keep the blood where it's supposed to be. It helps you don't bruise as much, whatever. And I had 12,000. So I looked like I'd been in a car accident because I had so many bruises all over me. And they said, if it had dropped any more, they would have just admitted me, because any bump would have just been it. So I was on lots of medication for that. It was like a sister chemo drug, and then a bunch of steroids, and for months. That was months of treatment. And you don't always recover from that, but luckily I have. My platelets are still on the low end. They hover about 65,000. So I still bruise easily, but everything, the blood stays in the veins now. It's a little bit better. And then the next year, in 2018, I had just been cleared from thrombocytopenia at Christmas and was celebrating that. And in January, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So then there was another year. And the breast cancer that I had at first, it was in the early stages. And so they set me up for, they did the biopsy and were setting me up for surgery. And between when I was diagnosed and biopsy surgery, in those few weeks, it had gotten so aggressive that it had broken out and was traveling. So when I went in for surgery, they ended up taking a lot more than they expected. And then they had to fill that with something. So now I have like muscles on my sides that just send excruciating pain every now and then because they're not what they used to be. So that's definitely, and that may always be, or it may get better. There's no saying there. And then I had to do chemotherapy and, it was on my hair kind of thing. And then I had to do radiation after that. So there was definitely a long road with that. And, I think when I mentioned, digging deep about, why is this happening to me? Like, what's happening? And, my marriage had been about a decade of destruction. And I think that, wearing that every single day definitely affects your being. Like, your emotional state is so connected to your physical body. And I don't think we emphasize that enough. I think people think, I'm so stressed out today, I'm just going to go for a run and I'm going to feel great. Well, you might feel great, but if you don't address all that emotional stuff that put you in that place in the beginning, it's going to come back and you're not going to feel great again. So I think, so that's my advice for people is to really dig deep.
So my, the main question here is, how are you now?
I am probably healthier in every way than I've ever been.
Yeah.
So I actually, by accident, ran across a picture of me. I think it was 2012, and I was so incredibly thin. You could see every bone in my hand. You could see like my cheeks were totally hollow, and I thought at the time I didn't realize that I was about to be sick for 6 years. So when I look back at that, it really, my hair was brittle. I still battle with that. I still battle with, crepe paper skin and brittle hair. And, but I think, I just didn't realize how unhealthy I was, because people think, oh, well, she's so thin, she must be healthy. And that is not the case. I literally didn't have enough to work with to fight off all of these things. And then as they kept coming, I just kept getting weaker and weaker. And so I think, then the big guys started moving in, those little cancer creatures. So,
And how do you, at this point, you're going through all of this, but on top of it, you're a mom and a wife.
Yes.
How do you stay positive during this time?
I actually think it's easier to stay positive if you are a parent. Because you look at those kids every day and you're like, okay, even if I can't do this for me, I've got to do it for them.
Yeah.
So I think that actually gives you that extra strength that you need. And at the time, my kids were really little. Like when I had meningitis, my son was like 3.5. He was tiny. And my mom had to move in with me for weeks, and because I literally couldn't leave the bed. So that's humiliating and defeating, and you just feel so useless when you're that ill. But to have that help is just immense. There are people that don't have that. Like my mom literally dropped everything in her life and moved into my house for weeks at a time, at different times, throughout all of this, at different times she would move in. So, I know that I'm so fortunate. Again, there's that silver lining. I have a lot of family. I have a lot of really close friends. That, when I had meningitis, I had a dear friend come to my house with her husband. She brought me to the hospital because it was the middle of the night. And her husband stayed overnight with my kids.
Oh, wow.
She left her kids at home and brought her husband to my house to watch my kids because my kids were younger. And I mean, to have friends like that is just really key. Like, you know, I mean, you have your family, but you choose your friends, and sometimes they can be even more important when you need them.
Very, very well said. That's a crazy story. I honestly, I didn't know the full. Like, I knew little bits and pieces, but that was the first time I've like heard.
Yeah.
So that's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, my mom was, you know, growing up and until she passed away, she was very sick, and she was very much a go-getter. And to go back to the you know thing where you have that motherly energy in the gym, like you have the same thing that my mom had, which was like you just keep going, and you like at least on the outside you show positivity, but it's just got to be hard knowing that like some of those things are out of your control. Like, so the kids were the biggest thing for you.
Yeah. And I, you know, and that's another thing to focus on is, okay, so you can't control this, and this, but what can you control?
Yeah.
You know, what can you claim, you know, to hold on to? And there's always something. It may be something really tiny. It might be like, okay, I got up today and put on a shirt. Okay, great. I mean, you know, like, and some days that is it. Some days that's all there is. And you just hold on to that, because the next day it might be a shirt and pants. You know, you just, you know, you just have to focus on the things that you can do, instead of worrying and letting all the things that you can't do at that moment take over. Because, you know, it just sends you in this downhill spiral. And that's not good. You know, they say, you know, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And that is true. That is I mean, I fully believe that. Because if you have your health, you literally can do anything, like anything. But if you don't, it's such a limiting factor. It really takes its toll, definitely. And I think for me, I wanted to be strong. My kids are really sensitive, and so, you know, and they feed off of, you know, my energy, just like all kids feed off the energy of their mom in particular. Sometimes their dad too, but in my case, it was more the mom. And so I knew that I had to be strong. And so when I actually didn't process going through cancer, because it was just too hard. It was like it was like yet another illness, and I had no idea that, you really don't know. It could come back, it could not come back. You really don't know. And those first 2 years after diagnosis are key. And luckily I'm 3 years out now, so that's good. Still healthy, still good. But I think it's really important just to, at some point you have to process it. So actually one of our members of the gym, she does this, she's part of a breast cancer survivor women's weekend thing. And I'm really excited. She convinced me to go, and she said, you really should. And I said, I don't know. I don't want to go there. I don't want to think those things again. I don't want to be back there. And she's like, this isn't about being back there. This is about being forward. Like, looking toward what's next. And I thought, oh, okay, I guess she's right, because, and all the women there are survivors in some way. Some years ago, some last year, And I was like, all right, maybe it's time. I'm 3 years out. I'm in kind of that safe zone, I want to say. So maybe it's time to walk the walk. So that is coming up the 11th and 12th. So I'm going to go.
So would you say that, like, the cancer was the last thing to hit, right?
Well, I had COVID in September last year.
Yeah. Okay.
But I did okay.
Yeah, but in regards to the big kind of group of illnesses.
Yeah.
So do you think, like, by the time the cancer hit, you were just desensitized by everything, and it was just
Yes.
Yeah. Now, do you think it helped you get through it, or?
I do, because I had seen, okay, you did that, you went through that illness and you did okay. You got, you went through all the horrible medication and all that stuff, and you did okay. And the other thing is going to the doctors, my regular doctor, specialist, whatever, it just became part of my life. And so by the time the cancer hit, it was like, oh, great, I'm going to go see Will, my doctor at, cancer care, Will Fabricius. And it just became so normal. And I didn't realize how normal it was until about a year out when the appointments started falling off the calendar. And I was like, what do I do now? Like, what do I do with my time now? Because it was always like, oh, wait, you have to go get your blood work. It's time to, because your appointment's tomorrow and they have to be able to read your results when you're there. So you have to go today to the hospital to get the blood work. And I just, and all of a sudden I didn't have to think about that as much. I still do have to get my blood checked and, have to go every 6 months or something, but that's nothing compared to how often I was going before.
So do you think it was actually a difficult transition to come out of because it was so routine for so long?
No, and that was only because while I was ill, there were times when I was making a list of all the things that I wanted to do when I was well. So all of a sudden, I just kind of threw myself into that list, and a lot of that was with my kids. Like, there were times I was so sick that I couldn't participate in things with them. I just didn't have the energy. I just literally couldn't do it. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go skimboarding with my son. I've never stepped on a skimboard in my life, and I totally just I just crashed and burned big. But he thought it was great, He's like, get up, try it again, Mom. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to break a hip. But, it was just the fact that I could do that with them, and going for bike rides and just these like simple things that some people just do every day without even thinking about it were like huge milestones for me. To have that much energy to do it without it wiping me out for the rest of the day. Yeah. That was really, really big.
So I do have one more question before I take all the time here. I'm sorry. I'm very intrigued by your story. So do you think that these things made you better? Do you think they made you stronger, appreciate more things? Like you said, you would do, things that you probably wouldn't have done before, with your kids. Like, do you think, talking silver linings, do you think, these terrible things that happened to you, in fact, maybe somehow had a positive effect on your life?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not just that, I couldn't have done them, like before I was sick. I probably could have gone skimboarding with my son, but I didn't. Instead, I was the one collecting all the kids and driving them to the beach, and then making the sandwiches, and I was doing that instead of participating in what they were doing. I was making sure everyone else was having a good time. And now I was like, gosh, if I don't do this now, I'm not getting any younger, so I got to get on the skimboard. So yeah, I definitely think my appreciation has changed in that I really value experiences so much more than ever. And, now there's a lot more travel in my life. There's, just even little things like taking my daughter to get school supplies, notebooks and whatever, everything is like a treat. Everything is like fun. It's like time with them is just really special. And before it was like, okay, check, school supplies done. Get that off the list, So I just think enjoying those just small moments is probably, really key.
Used to see it more as a chore, kind of. But
yeah, I used to be like, oh my gosh, now I gotta get school supplies, and now it's kind of like, let's go, It's very different. So, needless to say, I've eaten a lot more ice cream in the last couple years because I'd be like, let's go for ice cream. So I must say that so many times that, and my son actually the last couple times he's like, no, I don't really want ice cream. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, Mom, we just went like 2 days ago, and I was like, oh, all right, But
that's awesome.
I was like, kids that say no to ice cream, I guess I am overdoing it, right?
Okay. So, you've have these experiences, and now what's pretty cool is you work with a very diverse group of people at Hybrid Fitness.
Yeah.
Of really all health and fitness levels. How has your previous experiences helped you in what you're doing today in that work?
I think it's helped me connect with them. We do have some members who are breast cancer survivors, and as soon as they say, oh, I have a really hard time, doing planks because it tightens my chest and I have a really hard time, or any sort of chest exercise, is really challenging sometimes. And I'll say, I understand, so let's do this instead, And so I think just having them know that you heard them makes such a difference, And sometimes they'll even try the exercise anyway, just because they're like, oh, she understands, so I'll give it a try, But yeah, I think it's just really important. I think that compassion has to come first, and then they're more willing to kind of, follow your lead after that. You have to build that trust in what you're doing, who you're working with.
That goes to like one of my favorite quotes. People don't care. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yes. That's it.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I might have botched it.
No, but that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Like if they feel heard and that you're really listening to them, that creates a huge amount of trust for them to work with you.
So have you always been a go-getter like you are now? Like before the the sickness that hit you in your 40s? Or has that given you new perspective and you're just a go-getter now?
No. I think I always was a go-getter, but I think how I go about it is probably a little different.
Okay.
I guess I'm more selective, and I'm kind of before it was just to do it, and now it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this. Who's going to benefit? Like that's my next question. Is it me? Is it my kids? Is it my family? Is it the members of the gym? Like, if I'm going to do something really crazy in class with all of us, like everybody, we're going to time foot fires right now, and it's not on the list or something. And, I don't know. It's I have to think, who's going to benefit from this? Like, am I just doing this to do it, just to check it off? Or am I really going to feel something from this?
So you're much more intentional about your actions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that intent is definitely there.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay. Well, what do you I'm just curious, like, where you have had quite a bit of travel, and I don't think we've talked about that either, but travel in your life and going through these experiences. Personally, selfishly, like, what advice would you have for me? Being, like you said, half your age.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for me, like, going into, my next steps of life?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say?
I would definitely say to make sure you set that time aside, because you can always work more. That work is never going anywhere. There is always going to be work to do.
Oh
right?
boy, Melissa's gonna like this one.
well, it's actually, it's pretty cool because Cathy makes sure I make my date nights, and she holds me. She's like, "Hunter, you got date night tonight." Like, no, you're not skipping out. I'm like, "I'll work a little bit more," and she's like, "No."
Yeah, I'm like, "Why are you still here?"
Yeah.
I'm glad somebody else is trying to get you to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important, because it's those experiences you're going to remember, when you're 75, 95, however old you end up being, and you're toddling around with your cane. You're going to remember that trip you took to Costa Rica with Melissa, say, instead of, well, hey, that spreadsheet I worked on the other night, man, I'm still thinking about that. No, you won't even care about the spreadsheet, And I say this to my kids, like in school, like my daughter will be fretting over a math exam, right? And she'll be like, oh my God, I got 2 wrong. I'm like, well, 2 wrong is no big deal to me, but to her, it's like, that's just awful. And I'll be like, okay, think about it this way. In 20 years, is that 2 questions you missed going to matter? She's like, I'm not even going to remember them. I'm like, exactly. I'm like, that's it right there, So I think, when you have, especially an emotional issue, you kind of need to put it in the circles. So like anything really big is like part of the target. And anything that's a tiny pebble goes onto one of these outside rings of your circle. And so when you feel like life is all coming at you, you just map it on the rings and see, how many really big things are in the middle. When you really think about it, there's probably only one in the middle and all the rest are kind of on the outsides.
Dang.
Yeah.
Wise words from Cathy Caveney.
Yeah.
Can I just say real quick though that like when you're 95, I hope we're still like back squatting and pushing each other in the gym. Can we make a pact for that right now?
Load on the 2.5s.
2.5s? No way, dude. Hopefully we'll be at least up to 400 by then.
That'd be pretty cool.
You have walker races on the turf. I can see it now. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You'll still be here doing the podcast.
That's right. And so that's another thing. So you recently just joined in with us on some workouts.
I did. I think Brandon's going to put me through my paces for sure. For sure. And I'm really looking forward to that because I demonstrate exercises for people all the time, right? In all the classes that I teach. But it's really important for me to know what it feels like after the first set, after the second set, and especially after that third set. And, like today, I was like, Brandon, I like this third set is just killing me. And so it's good for me to know that because that way when I see someone struggling, I'll be like, okay, what's happening here? Is there too much weight? Do we need to take a break? Is that knee that you have an issue with? Is that bothering you? Like, let's take it apart and see what the issue is before we push you.
Yep.
I don't want anyone to have pain in the gym. I want them to challenge their body in order to get stronger, but I just don't want anybody to be in pain. That's just not how it should go.
It's absolutely great having you join us in our workouts. And I think that you've been through all of this stuff now, so you understand the importance of building your body up. A lot of people consider exercise as, they want to break down, they want to lose this, lose that. But like if you go into the gym thinking about building your body and growing, like that's where the benefits are. So like seeing you now kind of go through that, like it's really cool. So,
well, and I've had members say to me, when I come to the gym, there are times I just want to not think. But then when I'm here, you make me think, like whether they're counting, whether they're, trying to get the dead bugs so the legs and the arms are going in the right direction or whatever, and they're like, it actually said, I've had a few people say that it actually helps their emotional being as well. It's like connecting their body to their emotions. And I can't say enough about that. Like, I just think that is just so key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's next for you, Cathy? So you've got through some of these illnesses and now you've hopped on board here full time. Like, what do you see for yourself in the future? What big plans do you have?
Well, definitely more travel.
Yeah.
So I actually have a trip planned. It's about a 2-week trip to Peru. With a girlfriend I've known my entire life. There's a kind of a group of 6 of us. We've known each other our whole lives. And we turned 50 this year. And so she called me up and was like, hey, what do you think? And I was like, yeah, sign me up. Peru, is on my bucket list. So I was really excited. And to be able to do that with her, because we don't live near each other. So to spend that time with her is going to be really key. However, I'm a little nervous because my legs really hurt after Brandon's workout. So I'm kind of like, ooh, am I going to be able to climb all those mountains in Peru? So, we'll see what Brandon can do before I leave.
More split squats.
Yep.
Right. Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. So I guess, one thing I did want to say is, through these illnesses and through everything that I've gone through, it's like, when I say like fighting for your great life, it's not just about, when I say fighting, I don't mean it in a negative way. I mean it like in an ecstatic, exuberant way. So like if you're fighting for your health, like choose that path. Don't choose the I'm pissed off at the world path, because that's only going to add to your emotional baggage and not be your friend. So, as I said, just focus on that silver lining, find those people around you that support you, Could be family, friends, trainers, coworkers, anybody that's going to help you, support that journey that you're on, because that will carry you through.
Gotcha.
Very nice. It's a heck of a story.
Yeah, that's
I mean, we could probably dive like another half hour, an hour into this, but
yeah, but I mean, there's so many more questions I have.
I know.
I mean, I'm still curious about like pre 40s and what life looked like there, because like you said, I mean, what were the things that you did for your career? You said you worked behind a mahogany desk in the executive office.
I did. Yeah.
And what else?
Yeah. And well, I worked for 3 different universities. I worked for Colorado State University when I was actually going to school there, and through graduate school. I was going to school for cultural anthropology, but I worked for the psychology department. I know that sounds kind of strange. It was a research center on campus. Mm-hmm. And then I also worked for York University in Toronto. So I worked in the theater department and in the law school there. 2 totally different things. I know, really crazy.
Wow.
And then I also worked for the University of Michigan, and it was helping students all across the nation. There was a lot of travel with that. Get into multidisciplinary PhD programs. Because most people, when they do their PhD, they focus on one thing, really narrow focus, right? And so this was actually involving more than one discipline. So, you would have people on your committee from like economics and, just art. You could like combine like a bunch of different things into your PhD program and have all those mentors. So it was supported by the National Science Foundation. So it was a really cool program. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's what I did. And then I had my kids and I was home with them for quite a while. And then I did like odd jobs that worked around their schedule. So I painted, I edited textbooks once, I did like literally random stuff, ran fundraisers, I just did like things that I could do with a kid on my hip. And so I worked at a dental office for a few years, and that worked around the kids' schedules too. That's fantastic. It was Dr. Medina, Seasons of Smiles in Camden, if anybody needs their teeth cleaned. Fabulous people. And then from there, I came here. And so I came here, my hair was still really short because it was just growing in from chemotherapy. I was like, okay, it's time for a change, time to get strong, time to really invest in yourself. Because, as a mom, you invest in your kids and you make sure that they're all set. And sometimes moms overlook themselves. And I definitely did that. And so if I want to still be here for them, I need to put mom first sometimes. So.
I don't think it's a sometimes. I think it's a majority. A lot of the people that come in here, they get to a point where they realize that they can't provide for those they love any longer because they have not given themselves the attention that they deserve.
Yeah.
So
they're so depleted. They don't have much to give.
Yep.
So yeah, it's time to get them into the spa. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah.
I don't know about you, Hunter, but I feel like I need to accomplish a lot more in my life after hearing all of that.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just it's a different perspective, and I think it just reminds you that you really need to appreciate what you have and take the opportunities that you have in front of you, and I really liked your framework about big picture, like what's really important versus what seems important today. I think that's really useful, and I feel that same way, Dusty.
Yeah, for sure. So before we wrap up, do you have one more piece of advice or anything that you'd like to tell the audience, or just anything?
I think when you're faced with a really what you consider a horrible situation. So, I mean, I'll use my daughter with the math exam as an example. That's not a big deal, but I'll use it. So what I would say to her is she'd be like, oh, I got 2 wrong in the exam. I'm like, okay, what is the worst thing that can happen? She'd be like, I could get a bad grade, or I could fail math. And I'm like, okay, so how is that going to affect the rest of your life? Is it going to physically hurt you? Is it going to hurt your family? Is it going to destroy you emotionally? Probably not. So I think any problem that you're faced with, I've said that to myself millions of times, like, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? And then when that worst thing doesn't happen, it's like, oh, cool, this is all right. Like it's easier to move forward once you consider it, and then you crinkle it up and you throw it behind you. I have a saying on my refrigerator that says, don't trip over the things that are behind you.
Okay.
So like, don't linger back there. Like, what happened in that past life is gone. It's over. What are you going to do now? What are you going to do going forward? So you ate a piece of cake on Saturday and you're trying to lose weight. Who cares? Just move forward. That was Saturday. Today's Monday. Yep. Come to the gym, hang out with us, do your work. Just keep moving forward. That's it.
It's great advice.
Yeah, I'm motivated and I'm a little emotional right now.
Yeah,
to be honest. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Well, Cathy, thank you for being with us.
You so much.
I think this is probably one of the most valuable episodes we've done thus far. I think our viewers are going to really get a lot out of it. Not only they learn about you, but I mean, you provide so much just insight and knowledge and motivation and inspiration. So I think everybody's gonna like this one. So
yeah, we'll have to have you back for sure.
Oh yeah. After that, hell yeah, dude, that was crazy.
Thank you. If anything I said helped somebody else, that was why I decided to do this with you. Because everybody needs a helping hand. Everybody needs that last little bit of something that pushes them forward.
Yeah, it helped me. So
yeah, awesome. Anything else before we wrap it up?
I got nothing.
You got nothing. All right. Thank you everybody for listening. If you have not checked us out, please do subscribe. Give us a review. Tell us what you really think. If you have anything you want us to talk about, drop it in a message, an email, comments, whatever. We are on YouTube. We are on Spotify, Google Podcasts. We are now on Apple Podcasts as well. The big one. So check us out. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you all for listening.
All right. Until next time.